living fully alive in every way. You're listening to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how stressed are you? How anxious are you? Hi there, it's Dr. Carol, and welcome to Relationship Prescriptions. Stress, anxiety, things like that affect so many of us. The Centers for Disease Control says that about 1 in 4 of us suffer from enough distress to qualify for some kind of mental illness of some kind. And that doesn't take into account the lower levels of anxiety and stress that so many of us struggle with about life, what's going on in our own head or circumstances, memories, the future, etc. So many things in our world that can cause stress and anxiety. My guest today, Rebecca Lyons, knows what that's like personally. I'll let her share her story about how this became a very real challenge for her. But Rebecca Lyons also found a solution, a rhythm, a series of rhythms that all of us can implement to deal with stress and anxiety. Rebecca is quite a personality. She is a national speaker and a best-selling author of a number of books. She and her husband Gabe serve as the co-founders and run Q Ideas, a nonprofit organization that helps Christian leaders winsomely engage in culture. Their list of thought leaders that they engage with is quite impressive. Rebecca and her husband have 4 children. With all her media activity, Rebecca still finds time to talk about these rhythms to bring peace. Her latest book, Rhythms of Renewal, Trading Stress and Anxiety for a Life of Peace and Purpose, talks about that. I know that this conversation will give you some very helpful and practical ideas about what to implement in your own life in dealing with stress. So without waiting any further, here is my conversation with Rebecca Lyons. Well, Rebecca, it is such a pleasure to have you on the program today. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a joy to be here.
Your book, Rhythms of Renewal, Trading Stress and Anxiety for a Life of Peace and Purpose, has just so resonated with me. I've heard you on some podcasts and in person recently, and this message, I know, will be a blessing to those people that listen to me. This issue of anxiety and stress is huge in our world. This was a very personal issue for you. And I think that story of how this became such an issue for you really sets this up. How did this start?
Oh, sure. This began for me personally about 9 years ago. My husband and I moved 3 elementary age children from the suburbs of Atlanta to New York City, Midtown Manhattan.
Oh my.
And in theory, it made perfect sense with our work and what we were about. We were all about cultural renewal from a lens of faith. So we would tackle topics that were tough in our day through the lens of arts and media and government and policy and education. And we wanted to stay curious and think well and advance good in our cities. And so many of the people that were coming to our gatherings were in and out of New York City, kind of these innovators on the front lines of culture. But turns out that 4 months into my time in New York City, I had my first panic attack on a flight from Atlanta back to LaGuardia. And what began that day continued in planes, trains, elevators, subways, and crowds. So as you can imagine, living in New York City, I learned it was impossible to avoid those things. And over the course of a year, I began to just live crippled and couldn't really find my way out of it. You know, we had 8 million people in this span of 11 miles, and I found myself trying to claw myself off of trains and jump off of elevators when they got too crowded, and really kind of having this dark night of the soul personally as a mother.
You are a believer, a Christian. How did your prayers at that time impact this? And I imagine that although you were crying out to God, from what I've read in your book and so on, things didn't immediately change.
Right. No, it took over a year. And even then, what I believe happened is I began a healing journey. One night in my bed, in the middle of the night, September, almost a year later, I was waking up in the middle of my sleep, full on panic attack. And I just said, rescue me. And I cried out from my bed, and I was flooded with peace. And it was the first time I didn't have to run from the environment for the panic to stop. And the next day I remember stepping out of my apartment thinking, goodness, I don't even know what's happening. But, I just sensed that I was starting to walk into something that looked different. And I began to notice, when you're sick, you only look inward, but when healing begins, you look up and you look out and you begin to see everyone else. And it was the first time I was really focused on other people. And I started watching them and watching their interactions on the subways, or look behind the eyes and see kind of the pain that I found so many carrying just like me. 1 in 4 gripped in fear, anxiety, depression, mental illness, whatever that looked like. And I started to write about it, write articles, meet with friends over coffee, study mental health, especially in the church, and what to do with that. Because I knew my life verse had always been, I'm not giving you a spirit of fear, Rebecca, but power, love, and a sound mind. And I'm thinking, well, if that's true, then why do I feel like I've had crazy brain for the last year?
Yes.
Trying to get to the bottom of that. And over time, just learning that God actually established a created order in rhythm, and there's boundaries that rhythm brings that actually is for our flourishing. And when we stay within the constraints of rhythm, we come alive. And when we get outside of those boundaries of rhythm, chaos ensues and we spin out. And I wanted to reorder a life of peace and purpose. I wanted to rebuild a life from the inside out with a lot of intention. And over the course of 7 years, that really made its way into this book. Rhythms of Renewal, trading stress and anxiety for peace and purpose.
Yeah. Rebecca, don't you think that those of us, and I have certainly been guilty of this, that just try to do everything and overwork mentally and emotionally and physically, that is really out of line with our creation, that we try to be who God did not make us to be. Our physical bodies are not less important than the spirit part of us that connects with God. We're all integrated, and we can forget that.
We can. Part of it's the fall. When sin enters, then all of a sudden, suddenly toil and labor enters. And so I think some of our overwork is rooted in this like weird sense of shame that we have to keep earning favor with God, that we have to make up for the things we do wrong. And we keep it really, I do think in some ways, the desire is nobility. We want to please him. We want to serve him. We want to honor him. But the underlining motives behind that is because we feel unworthy of his love. I bought this lie early on in life that I wasn't worthy of love unless I earned it, because it was what I saw modeled in the church. I just saw people getting praised when they were like super Christian, and then a little bit shunned or shamed when they weren't. And I was thinking, man, this isn't the way Jesus interacts with people. But so often, maybe I feel free in that secret place with Jesus, but I don't always feel that way around Christians. And I'm not sure that I feel accepted and known fully when I show my ugly side. and so part of this is I think we strive and we compete and we compare, partly because it's really just this underlining feeling of unworthiness. And I talk about that in the book, even in the tech detox chapter, that God had to get my attention and go, hey, Rebecca, you are worthy to receive something beautiful and not have to share it. Not everything in your life that you get from me is for public consumption. That was for you. That was my gift to you. Stop feeling like you have to share everything for worth. And it's weird how things get distorted online. We really do mean well, I believe. I think we're good-willed people. I mean, yes, sin is a part of our story. We know that. I'm not disclaiming that. But I think we actually really want to do honorable things. We are good-willed people. But it just gets twisty when we can no longer see the motives by which we act out. And so part of these rhythms are taking us back to the simple places like rest, restore, connect, create. God is in all these rhythms. He's already dwells there. He's inviting us to join him there. And so in the rest rhythm, I talk about a tech detox, about examining your life, taking inventory, confession, examine and confession, get silent, quiet the noise, have a morning routine, take the Sabbath, routines for deep sleep. All these things are things that slow us down, that quiet our hearts, that say, am I okay? God, are we okay? Is there something you want to reveal to me that is hidden that needs healing? Because you cannot heal what is hidden. So show me any unforgiveness, show me any bitterness, contempt, resentment, that somehow is just rooted in unworthiness, rejection, that I have somehow just clouded with a lot of busyness to cover up the pain of those things. Show me how to bring those to the light, and please help me heal. Please heal them. Heal them.
Yeah. Don't you think we all know that? I mean, intellectually, we believe that those things are important, but so few of us actually put them into practice. And that's part of what I hear you calling for in this book, that it's more than just an intellectual assent that we need rest, for example, this first rhythm, but to actually do it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. We can, as men and women, like men can so often compartmentalize. And whereas women are typically more integrated in that we like to do a lot of tasks at the same time, we feel fully. I think it's why sometimes it's easier for women to be a little more vulnerable, because we're more in tune with what we're feeling, and maybe the motives behind it because we're verbal processors. But in general, just men or women, what can happen is we can get so busy that we crowd out the time that's required for self-examination. So scripture's so clear, search me, O God, know my heart, test me, know my anxious thoughts, see what's wicked, and lead me in the way everlasting. I'm laughing at the phrase of David here, because he's saying, test me and know my anxious thoughts. In the King James, he's saying, lead me in the way. We wake up with a verse that says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God will guard your heart and mind. So he's basically saying, if you feel the temptation to be anxious, just give it back to me, and then give thanks for what I do in your life, and then I'll flood you with peace. I'm thinking, wow, that's so simple. The temptation to be anxious may always be there. There might be some muscle memory. It might be a trigger for us to be fearful. But God's saying, hey, when that comes, just give it to me. Like, just say, hey, I trust you, God. I know that you see, you care for the sparrows. You care for me. You care for my loved ones, my children, my family, my provision, our home, our food, our needs. You say you care for those things. Do I believe you? And if I don't, then forgive me of my unbelief, because part of anxiety is basically saying, I don't trust you, God. Yeah. I'm going to have to do this myself. And so I think the beauty of the rest rhythm is it just invites us to just confess those things and be done with it. And it doesn't mean that the temptation doesn't come back, but you at least are a little better equipped to know how to navigate it when it does, instead of feeling powerless to it.
Sounds like letting God be God. How important. The next one, restore. Unpack that for a moment.
Yeah, restore is physical health. So rest is inner life, spiritual health, mind, will, and emotions. Restore is body. There's actual chemical things that change in your body when you actually fall in the boundaries of rhythm. So the restore rhythm is all about, food for fuel. What are you putting in your body? Food for energy, food or for endurance, perseverance, right? Using the workout pants to actually raise your heart rate. Mm-hmm. A brisk walk, 15 minutes or more, elevated heart rate will actually increase serotonin in your body, which is a happy hormone. It actually feelings of accomplishment, positivity. It helps you go out and keep doing more of that, because it actually yields progress and results. And we want that. We need that as people. We need that momentum to keep going. This idea of diet, whether it's caffeine or sugar, that's just going to make you crash in the afternoon. And then you never actually get the reserves you need physically to have energy to do the work that you feel so passionate about. So we start with the rest and restore, because if you don't have rest at night, you don't sleep well, you don't have a good morning routine, you don't put the right food in your body, then forget just, calling and purpose and ministering to others, because you can't even manage yourself on some level enough to have anything extra to give out of the overflow. So that's the idea of restore. It's coming back to this adventure, pushing yourself, energy level, permission to play, road trip, like stirring your creativity and imagination in this physical way, getting active, and then letting the strength that builds from those things take you now into these two output rhythms of connect and create.
As you described the difference between those input and output rhythms, as I was looking through that, it made me think of a body of water. If like a pond or a lake, if it gets no input, it will be dry. But then it also needs output. If there's no output, it will get, stinky and algae filled and
Stagnant.
not be of, stagnant, not be of any use to anyone. So the next two rhythms, connect and create, that spoke to me so much, a place where I have had to intentionally invest some of my own energy. What do you mean by connect?
Connect is relational health. So every rhythm has a health. So again, rest is spiritual, restore is physical, connect is relational, create is vocational. So relational, to me, is like so primary before create, because you can't create unless you create in collaboration, and you can't create in collaboration if you're not in connection. So I like create being last. It's the offering to the world, but it's when the rest of the things have added up nicely and layered upon each other so that you are full in the way to create. So connect, to me, it's all about your family, your friendships, your home, your hospitality, your ability to handle conflict resolution by apologizing first, or seeking to understand, persevering in marriage, getting to the root of the problems, confessing those things. Forgiveness is a huge milestone toward inner healing. It is actually, I believe that forgiveness becomes resentment, which becomes bitterness. Forgiveness becomes bitterness, resentment, then contempt. And contempt is really where you begin to feel superior to the person who actually did the wrong. Like, I would never, ...
Yeah.
And when you get to that place of elevating yourself and suppressing someone else, we're so far gone from the spirit of unity that Jesus prayed for, that you just got to come right back to the beginning of like, I am still broken and in desperate need of a savior, just like everyone else. I might not have wronged someone in the way that it feels like this person has wronged me, but out of my obedience to Christ and his forgiveness of my sin, I still choose to walk in agreement under his forgiveness for this person and extend that. I extend that because I want to heal. Bitterness is a cancer. It actually will literally rob us of joy, rob us of freedom, rob us of a life that we were made to live. And it's not easy. I'm not saying it flippantly. Some people have walked through devastating situations of being wronged, but forgiveness is a gateway. It's a linchpin, I believe, for freedom, so that we can walk into the create rhythm.
As a medical doctor, I am impressed by the so many studies recently that not only show the impact of failure to forgive, unforgiveness on our emotional well-being, but also on our physical health. There are very real biological results of holding on to bitterness. I have
Yes.
been so impressed by that data. Rebecca, I often hear from people who call me or say to me, yes, I believe I should connect, but I have no friends. My family is not healthy. I don't have anybody that I feel like I can connect with. I'm just isolated, and I feel like there's nobody there for me. What would you say to them?
Well, I would start with the chapter I wrote on friendship called Be the Friend You Wish to Have, because someone has to initiate. There's a whole bunch of other people that feel the same way as you, that they don't have any friendships either. Someone at some point has got to lead. And when we raise our hand and go, hey, I feel alone and I would really like to reach out. Would anybody else want to be in a group? Or, all of a sudden you'll be like 5 people go, yeah, I actually feel alone too. A great way to connect, I do think, is through the local church. People usually come there with the sole purpose to go, I need some community in my life. It's really hard to be mean to someone else who you're sitting next to in a pew. Like, at some point when they say, talk to the person next to you, you're like, this is really awkward, but I need to do this.
Yeah.
Because we really do want it. And the lie of the enemy is that we're better off alone, so nobody can see our worst parts. But it's not true. That's actually the worst thing you can do to a human, is give them solitary confinement. That is the ultimate punishment, because in our primal being, we need each other. We were created by a communal God to be communal people. And we cannot flourish apart from that. So I would say get aggressive about it, like not annoying, but get like, if you have one resolution or one rhythm where you're like, I cannot cheat on this one. I've got to get out and I've got to meet people. And the reason why I think there's an epidemic of loneliness today that's greater than it's been Right now, 46% believe that they have high feelings of loneliness. 27% say they don't have a real friend. This is because we have a digital friendship, faux friendship thing that masks real loneliness, because you can be all perky online and then you can get back off and you're basically a person in a dark room with no lights on and you feel completely isolated. So it's almost this deception of friendship, but really it's not people in real life that know you and see all the parts of you. And so I would just advise people to go, like, if you want to see change, you're going to have to be the one that starts it. And you're going to have to put yourself out there in ways that you might not like. I mean, because then people kind of get up in your business and you're like, I don't really want you to see that. You don't have permission to do that. Well, that's part of what community does, is it's proximate and it's present. And ultimately it can be permanent. And then you're going to go, oh yeah, there's some messy parts of community too, where I need to have grace with other people and I can't always get what I want and do the things I want when I want them. And I have to be selfless. And yet in the end, that's what we were made to do. When
Exactly.
we love that way, we were like, oh, this is actually very rewarding. It's challenging at times, but it's also the most beautiful thing that God created for us to experience.
After my husband passed away, this was what I had to put the most intentional effort toward. I
Mm,
knew all the stuff, but it was hard for me to find the energy to reach out and connect with people. That became such an important part in my
mhm,
forward motion, in my own healing.
I'm sure.
I just want a second to anybody listening how important it is to make the effort to reach out and connect, even if it feels hard. Rebecca, just about Create, the vocational wellness, so important for our well-being, and I'm glad you included this.
Yes, because I think it's the song in our hearts that God instilled in, in the womb. It's the things that make us come alive. He gives us all birthright gifts. He is the master creator and his imago Dei is in us. And when he crafts us and knits us in Psalm 139, it says, my works were wonderful. Your frame was not hidden when I made you in the secret place. My eyes saw your unformed body, and all your days were written in my book and planned before one of them began. So it's this idea that my works were wonderful when I knit you. I had a holy imagination about what you were going to be and what you were going to look like and how you were going to operate. And then I actually had a plan for your days. They're not forced upon you. You have free will, but I invite you into a journey with me, and I've equipped you to walk that journey with the gifts I've already given you. And I think when we start to find that, when we really wake into that, when we go back to us as children, a lot of people are like, well, where do I begin? Well, go back to yourself as an 8 or 9 or 10-year-old. What were the things that you loved, that you were curious about naturally, that you would give more time and energy to? Maybe it's something that drove your parents crazy because you actually loved it so much. I was called Becca Book in 4th grade. We didn't have a TV. I read 62 Nancy Drew books just that year. I had nothing else to do. And I didn't know then that readers make writers. And I would have, even in my 20s with kids at home and babies crawling all over me, still didn't wake into the fact that readers make writers. It wasn't until after I'd gone through panic attacks, a year later, somebody said, name your year in a word last year. And I said, rescue. And they said, why? And I said, it's the first time I've really experienced the rescue of God in the 30 years I've called myself a Christian. And they said, you should actually talk to a book publisher about that idea. And I was like, what? Like I had been journaling, I'd been writing articles, but I still didn't even have a comprehension like, oh, this is actually, writing has always been cathartic for me. It's always been a healing. It's always been my way of processing. Maybe there's something there. I think sometimes we just have to go back and explore who we were as kids, what we loved, what we couldn't quit.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that curiosity was there for a reason, which means it's still there somewhere, and you just have to unearth it and find it.
In talking just a moment about your own story just now, Rebecca, it brings me to the last thing I'd love you to comment on, a little more personal. You are one busy lady. For our listeners, you've got 4 kids, 3 of them teens, 2 of them, you're one of the teens, and a preschooler with Down syndrome. You are a writer. You travel all over the place. You speak frequently. You and your husband run Q Ideas. Just going, so much productivity. How do you incorporate some of these rhythms in your own life, an incredibly busy life?
Well, for one, I am still wearing sweatpants all day today. Part
Yay.
of it's efficiency. So for me, if I have a day of doing podcasts, I have team. I have help. Like, this isn't just me working in isolation, because again, I think create happens in community. So I have a team of about 4 or 5 of us that helps with my scheduling, that helps with sometimes picking the kids up from school, so that then when dinner begins, we're all together and we have the night where we can slow and be present for each other. That hasn't happened immediately. That's taken time to develop, to cultivate, to learn the hard way what didn't work and what stressed mom out to where she wanted to yell at everybody, versus what are some just simple practices. Again, these are rhythms of home, so that we can have Sabbath together yesterday, so we filled up and connected before we begin the week as a family. And even my kids have a say in how many days I travel, and we adjust those when we need to. This past month was intense because I had a book come out, but in general, it's 3 to 4 nights a month. It's a round trip, quick in and out. I'll speak, come right back home, because they know that that's like the part of my job that makes my heart sing so much. Like meeting people in person, teaching, watching the lights come on. Like for me, that makes the reward of writing behind a laptop even more rewarding, is seeing people actually encounter life change. So because that's a high value, I think part of it's all of us coming back to what are the highest values in your life and your work, and making sure that you set those up for success by creating enough boundaries and margin around those things. And so I'm just as proactive as scheduling the rest rhythm or the Sabbath rhythm, or even this weekend, our family decided we didn't really get a fall break because the book came out the week before and it was very much book touring, and they would meet me and it was get away for 3 days. We know it's not normal to do this, but we missed that and we want to get that back. And so it's just making these tweaks in real time. My husband and I have very proactive conversations on the regular. And I talk about this in the book about like carving that space out for us to plan and prepare. We just did a marriage and parenting conference a week ago that we hosted, but we wound up actually learning as much as everybody else, because we had Emerson and Sarah Egrich come teach.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I can't believe this is work. This isn't work. This is me actually taking notes, and then Gabe and I carving out time this afternoon to get honest with each other on what we need to work on. If we just become lifelong learners, even in everything we do, we'll keep tweaking, modifying, making room for the things in that season that needs the most attention. And I think God really does honor the diligence to keep pressing in, to not abandon family or to abandon vocation, but to know that He makes room for all of it. We just need to probably spread things out.
What a great testimony. What a great message, Rebecca. Bless you and your family in sharing this message and your work for His kingdom and walking forward. That conversation actually challenged me with some of my own rhythms. I took Rebecca's quiz, and you can do the same, RebeccaLyons.com/quiz. It's free on Rebecca's website. That short 5-minute quiz will help you understand what is your healthiest rhythm among these. I took that quiz, and I actually discovered that Restore happened to be my healthiest rhythm at this point in life. Frankly, that surprised me a little bit, but I was grateful. When you take that free quiz, you'll get your healthiest rhythm also, and then a personalized response that gives you some ideas about how you can improve the rhythms in the other areas of your life. I'd also encourage you to go to Amazon and get her book, Rhythms of Renewal, Trading Stress and Anxiety for a Life of Peace and Purpose. We'll make sure the link to that is in the show notes. We'll also have links to Rebecca's social media channels and so on. If you implement some of these rhythms in your life, I am certain that your stress and anxiety will improve. God made us as integrated human beings, not just to work or not just to pray. For example, all the parts of our lives need to be integrated, and in these rhythms that God built us to need. And this book will help you do that. I want to let you know how joyful I am when I see a message from one of you. And I invite you to do the same. drcarolministries.com/podcast. If you leave a comment there, it comes directly to me. And I love hearing from you, whether that's a question, an idea for another podcast episode, a topic you like addressed, or just to connect in any other way. I would really love to hear from you. It also blesses us when you share our podcast with your friends to help others find out about this message of healthy relationships in every area: relationship with God, relationship with others, intimate relationships in marriage, and so many more. Thank you again for being part of our podcast family. And until next time, may God bless you.
Thank you for listening to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol. Our purpose is to provide trustworthy resources that help you and others live fully alive in every way as God intended. If you would like to help others experience transformation in their lives and relationships, we invite you to partner with us. Text the word GIVE, that's GIVE, to the number 512-980-1620. Or visit our website at drcarolministries.com/donate to make a one-time contribution or monthly gift. Your financial support allows us to expand our message and to help others. Thank you so much, and may God bless you.